Welcome back everyone for another episode of Adventures in Mask Making. In our last episode, you seen us receive our printed mask back from the 3D printer. We removed the bridges, we painted the insides of the ears, and we added a foam liner to the inside of the mask. Stay tuned to this episode of Adventures in Mask Making to see us complete our build to go from design to reality. Alright everyone, so now we're going to get close to the end of this whole mask making process, and we're going to focus on what's been the hardest part so far, which is the lenses for the eyes. Now the reason why this ended up being the hardest to create out of the whole project was I didn't know what to do. So I knew I wanted to have an eye that was similar to our logo, which is an egg-shaped eye, but I wanted to be able to have a lens instead of just an empty cavity. A couple of different things I thought of. Initially I was thinking of using a material on the back part, but then I didn't think that would look good since the rest of the mask is turning out very well. So then we did some different things. I tried using clay and plexiglass and different things. Anyways, none of it worked out. So I finally got the idea to do vacuum forming to make these lenses. And to do that, what I ended up doing was using TinkerCAD to make a pattern, and then I had the 3D printer print the pattern using ABS. This is the same type of plastic that's used to make automotive parts, and that was essential because I wanted something that could withstand high heat from whenever I'm pulling the plastic sheet to make this out of the toaster oven and putting it directly on top of the pattern. I knew that if it couldn't, then it would end up melting the plastic of the pattern and ruining everything. So he printed this out of ABS, worked out really well. Then I just sanded everything down smooth, and we were able to do that. If you're interested in looking at that whole process of making the vacuum forming machine and making the lenses, you can look at the link that we have posted on the video to check that out. Now back to the lenses. So this is the finished product that we ended up getting from the pattern that we made. And this had its struggles as well. Once we got to this point, I knew that we needed to put it in the mask, but it was more of a matter of, okay, how do we want to do that? So at first what we've done, and it turned out pretty good. This is one of our masks. As you can see, it looks fine from the front. And what we ended up doing was we just used silicone on a couple areas inside of the mask to get it to stick. I tried a number of different adhesives, but I couldn't find anything that would adhere both to the plastic of the mask and the plastic lens. So what I ended up coming up with was silicone. I looked online and I had found some different things, and I figured, okay, I'm just going to try silicone. And I did it and it worked. But a couple things to take into consideration when doing that is you have to have a way to hold the mask, or at least in our case the mask, to where it's not touching the lens itself. And as you can see, it touches. So I had to support this. I had to set it up off of the table. And then we took a Ziploc baggie full of rice and set it down inside of here. And the reason why we did that was so that the Ziploc baggie would conform to the shape inside here, but it also hold pressure from the weight of the rice inside until the silicone cured. Now, while this does look okay, it's a decent solution. I didn't think it was the final version that we wanted to do, and the reason why is because this is kind of more permanent, meaning that I don't have any good way of removing these lenses. To do that, we're going to have to cut this off. It's going to be messy, and then trying to get another one in there to sit flat and everything, it's going to be a pain. So we decided to go ahead and leave this one in since it's done, but we wanted to come up with a way to be able to put everything in here and get it to work to be able to remove these lenses. So what we did was we created these little clips here in TinkerCAD, had them printed out of the same PLA that we used to make the mask. Then we put our plastic lens inside. We drew an outline around the lens, and then we glued these little clips around the outside of that line. This way we can put the lenses in, and if they get scratched or broken for whatever reason, we can pull the lens out and then just put a new one in. Since we now have our vacuum forming machine that we made, it's very simple and quick to make new lenses. It takes just a minute or two to heat up the toaster oven and then make the lens. So I wanted to do this so that we could just pop the lenses in and take them out if needed. Now, along the way to get to this process, we also ran into a problem because we knew that we needed to glue those clips in. I didn't know what glue to use. So this was our first go around at it, and I kept this to show. If you can see here, this was using Gorilla Glue, which is basically super glue or crazy glue. So that's what we used, and it ended up whitening the plastic. It had a chemical reaction, and that chemical reaction wasn't only on here. After we put our lens in, it even transferred over to the lens and it made it white. Now, you may not think it's a big deal because it's on the inside, but the problem is not only did it transfer to the lens, it also transferred to the outside. It's not very easy to see in the camera, but this whole area is very light colored. It doesn't match the black of the rest of the mask. So we basically ruined this mask using that glue. So then I had to figure out a different way to adhere those clips to the inside of the mask. So what I did was I went to Home Depot and I purchased these two products. First I tried this, which is JB Weld Clear Weld. This is made for plastics. However, for whatever reason, it just would not adhere the PLA very well. I wanted it because it's clear, so you're not going to see it, but it just didn't work out. So what we ended up using was JB Weld Plastic Bonder. Now, this is great. Whenever you use this, you just let it sit like overnight. It says 15 minutes, but I let it sit overnight. It's not going anywhere. You're going to break the plastic before this stuff breaks. The only problem is, if you can see here, it's tan. Now, on the inside of the mask, it's not a big deal because nobody's going to see it. But you just have to take that in consideration. If you're going to glue something with this, make sure it's out of sight, depending on what color of an item you're gluing, because you will see it. Now, there may be ways to tint this. I don't know. I wasn't too concerned about it since I was using this inside of the mask. But maybe if you're doing this for a project where it's going to be visible, you might be able to reach out to JB Weld or look online and see if there's a way to tint this glue to a different color. Because it turns out, whenever you glue it, it ends up being this whitish tan color here. But that wasn't a problem for us. It ended up working very well. And as you can see in this mask, we've got all of our clips in. So now, the moment you've all been waiting for, we're going to put the lenses in this mask, and then we're going to be about done with this part of the project. So there you have it. We have the plastic lens inserts inside of the mask being held in place by the clips that we made. And again, if the lenses become scratched or broken, we can simply remove them and put in new lenses. Now let's look at it from the outside, and there's the result. Everything looks great. So this is what we were looking to achieve with this. This has been a very difficult and long process. We've worked many months on this project, but we finally got it. Now, the only thing left to do on this whole mask is going to be to put the strap across the back and try this on. So we're going to do that with the next part of the video. You'll see us making the strap and then finishing this mask off. Alright guys, so the next thing we're going to cover here are the teeth for the mask. So one of the things that I wanted to take into consideration whenever we created the logo was the fact that, you know, bunnies are known for their buck teeth, and we wanted to make sure that we incorporated that into the logo. And then since we made our masks to look similar to the logo, I also wanted to incorporate it into the mask. So what I did, as you can see here, this is the mask without the teeth installed. What I did was I modeled this set of buck teeth within TinkerCAD. So a couple things to take into consideration. I made the teeth, and then I made this piece here contoured to fit inside of this nose area. And then I made a little spot on the back here to catch on the back side of here, just to make sure that it locks it into place as good as possible and keeps it from moving any further. So one thing to take into consideration in TinkerCAD is whenever you're modeling, you know, you can group all kinds of different shapes together, and to cut them, what you do is you make whatever shape you're wanting to make. You make that shape transparent, and then you group it onto whatever other object you want to cut. And that's what I did here. So I made this, and then I made another one. I made the second one transparent, and then I put it into the place where I wanted it to be within the mask, and I grouped it to the mask. When I did that, it made this hole. Now, having said that, it makes it the exact size of this. Why that's important is because when you do that, you can't just slide it in, because it's the exact same size. You need a little bit of room in there to be able to move this in. Now what I could have done, I could have made this a little larger, the transparent version, and then grouped it so that you could slide this in easier. However, I decided not to do that. I left it tight like it was, and then I came in with a file, and then I cleaned these holes out. There's a couple reasons why I chose to do that. One was because I wanted it to be a nice tight fit, so I didn't have to worry about it sliding out afterwards. And the other was, whenever you do the 3D printing, making these holes, there's typically, at least in this type of hole, you're going to have some leftover filament that you have to remove afterwards. So it's not going to be a perfectly flush, perfectly smooth surface. And you're more than likely going to have to come in and clean it out anyways, whether it's with a file or a razor blade or whatever. So since I knew I was going to do that anyways, and I knew I wanted it to be tight, I just left it as is. Then I came in with a file, and then I just took, it wasn't very long, probably less than a minute, and just went through and cleaned out each side so that this would slide in. So that's how we made this. We had it printed in PLA to match the mask in white for the teeth, and we'll show you how it fits into the mask. So we flip the mask over. You can see the holes right here for where it goes. And then that's just going to snap down into place. Fits good. We also made a hole here to allow air to come up for whenever we're breathing. And you can't really see the hole from the front of the mask, and that was done on purpose. I just made it big enough to where some air could come through, but yet it wouldn't be noticeable for the teeth. So there you have it. That's it for the teeth for the mask. Okay, so we finally made it to the last phase of our mask, which is the creation of the strap that will go through these holes and secure the mask to our head. To do that, we're going to use some different materials, and I will discuss those so you can see. First, what we used was a knit heavy stretch elastic. Now the one we used is 1.5 inches wide. They make different widths of this. I believe they've got also a 1 5/8, which is a little thicker, but I made the holes in the mask to fit this size, so this is what we're going with. We're also going to be using these. This is adjustable slide buckles, and the idea of these, and I'll show you in a moment, is so that once we have the strap installed and we put it on our head, we can move these to adjust the tightness. I thought this was a good idea because with elastic, just because you get it to where you want it to be, it could loosen up a little bit over time, and this will allow you to make it a little tighter if you need. Another thing that we're going to be using is this right here. Now this is for snap buttons. They make a pair of pliers that you can buy for these, but since I was only going to do it a couple of times, I didn't think it made sense. The pliers are like $30, and I think this was $4. So I decided to buy these, and this is what the cardboard looks like on the back. Heavy duty snap tool. On the back of it, you'll see here, it shows you what order to use the tool with the different snaps. And we also purchased heavy duty snaps. This will be the outside. It's got this glossy black finish. And then you've got the inside pieces here. This is what the cardboard packaging looked like on it. Just make note that with the one I have here, this is the heavy duty snap. So whatever tool you buy, whether it's the pliers or the tool that I showed you, make sure that you get the heavy duty version for the heavy duty snap. If you're getting a regular snap, then you can just use a regular. I don't know if the heavy duty tool will fit a regular snap or not. I haven't tried it, but just take that into consideration if you're going to use these. I bought everything that I showed you from Michael's and Hobby Lobby. No real particular reason why I purchased it there, other than I was already in the store and I knew that we needed these, so I bought them there. Now, here's one that I've already made just to show you guys, give you an idea of what it's going to look like. There's another piece that goes on the end here that will wrap around. I wanted to go ahead and make one so I could get my dimensions and everything correct and go ahead and cut one so I have it ready to show you how to do it. Now I'm not going to go over the dimensions that I use to cut these, but and the reason why I don't want to do that is because depending on the mask you have and the size of your head and how tight you want it, you're going to cut everything to what makes the most sense for your project. What I also did was, whenever I cut this material, I did go over it with a lighter just to singe the edge and make sure that it doesn't fray. It also makes it easier to work with whenever you're pushing it through holes and things if it's singed on the end here. Okay, so what we've got is we've got two different pieces of material. We've got one long piece and one short piece. And we're going to install on the short piece 4 different buttons. We're going to have 2 outer and 2 inner, 2 on each end. Then on the long piece, we're going to have 5 buttons. And we'll show you where we're going to place those at. But one end will have 2 inner, and then a little bit up we'll have 2 outer, and then there'll be 2 more, so sorry, 5 in total. You'll have 1 inner and 1 outer further up here. But we're going to go over the process of making each one of these pieces, how we did it, why we did it, and hopefully it'll give you some inspiration if you're looking to do this. Now, one thing I do want to note, the reason why we went this route with the snaps, I've seen a lot of videos online, and most people just glue these on. There's nothing wrong with that. But in our particular case, I wanted to make something that over time, if this thing wears out from putting it on and off, that we can just replace this with a new one. So that's why I made the holes in the mask, and this way we can just simply wrap it around where we need it to be and snap it into place. When we're done with it, if it gets worn out or whatever, we just take it off, make a new one. It's pretty simple. It takes about 10 minutes to make, 10 to 15 minutes. When your first one's going to take longer, just getting your dimensions and everything, but once you get one made, it's not very hard. But that's why I decided to use the buttons. Also, another reason was, if you recall earlier in the video, I had a hard time finding anything that would really stick to this PLA material. The two-part epoxy works, but whenever you use two-part epoxy, it's not going anywhere. So if I were to use that to adhere this to the mask, it's never going anywhere. I'm gonna have to cut it off. It's gonna be a nightmare. So I thought this would be the best option for us. But you look at what the best option is for you. Maybe it makes sense to use a glue gun or some other type of glue. I don't know. But I felt that this was the most secure way that's gonna hold it together, not gonna come loose, and the fact that we can replace it over time if we need to, we'll be able to do that. Okay, so we've got our snaps laid out here, and we've got the outside that you'll see, which is the shiny gloss, and this piece. Now the way this works is this will slide down over top here, and then you use this tool and a hammer to basically smash this little part here in, and it just puts enough pressure on to hold it in place. And it's not going anywhere. I actually messed one of these up, and I had a pretty hard time getting it apart. So it's definitely not going to go anywhere. And if you're going to do very much of this, I recommend just buying the pliers. It's probably much quicker and easier, but since I wasn't doing very many, I decided not to. But anyways, this is the outside part, and then this is the inside. So you'll notice on the inside, the back of this is not, it doesn't have the glossy black look because you're not going to see it. And then you've got the other part of the snap here. And then it's the same process. This is just going to slide down over this. Now, one thing to take into consideration when you're using the outside, it is a little different. If you can see, this is the tool that you're going to put this down on. One side has a little dimple that sticks out, and the other side's flat. The flat side is for this glossy black finish side. You put it in there. And then the dimple side is for the inside part that you're not going to see. It just sits on here. Now, I think you could use this probably on the other side as well if you want. But the idea with this little dimple was to hold this centered and try to get it as the best alignment that you can. So what we'll do is we'll take our small piece of elastic, and we need to mark roughly where we want to put these. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going to get one of these pieces and lay it on here so we can see, just get a rough idea of alignment, like so. Because we want to make sure that there's enough room for it to attach. And then I'm going to go through and see if I can't make a little spot. There we go. Okay, so I've made a mark where my holes need to be. Now what I'm going to do is use a punch that I have here. And I know that my holes need to be here, and I want them to be aligned with this side so that whenever I put the snaps in, it's as close as possible. So I'm going to put these together, and then we're going to get a piece of wood, and we're just going to keep punching this dot until it goes all the way through. And we'll end up doing that on both of them to make sure that we get this as the best alignment that we possibly can. Okay, so as you can see, we were able to penetrate through both sides. This will make sure that we get the best alignment that we possibly can. Before I go over to the other mark that we've got and try to make a hole in it, I'm going to use this as a guide to get my snap to go through this hole easier. That's key, because if I don't, what will end up happening is whenever I pull this through here, that hole will close up because of this elastic. So I go ahead and take advantage of this being in here and doing this now. It doesn't matter which side you do first, just make sure that whichever it is, you do that same one whenever you make the new hole. So what you'll do is, if you can see, I'm just going to place this over the end, and then I'm going to move the material up until it goes around it, There. Well, that's just in my opinion, a way to make this a little bit easier to do. So what I'm going to also do is I'm going to leave this in here for the time being. We're just going to lay this down on top of our tool. We'll put the other part of our snap on top. Now you want to make sure that you get this little point set in the middle of the snap. Then you're just going to lightly hammer it, and you'll notice the difference in the sound as it's getting closed in from the hammer. There we go. So here's what it'll look like. We've got it set in there pretty good. Now I had to hit it a little harder than what I expected because this piece of wood that I'm using isn't flat. The best thing is really if you can just lay this on concrete and you don't have to hit it very hard with the hammer. And that's what I did on the other one, but to be able to record this a little easier, I thought I'd use this. All right, now, the reason why I left this in here was the same process that we did with this, we're going to do here. This is for the other side. Now, with this small piece, we're going to double this around like this, and that allows us to use this tool to bring it through. So again, we're just going to use this and pull it straight up, over, there. Now we've got this where it needs to be. We'll just slide the other side on here, and this is how it'll end up looking when we're done. So we're going to go ahead and hammer this down. After you get it on here, it's going to be like this. Then we can just double check it and make sure that it's going to snap correctly. Now, if for some reason that doesn't snap on, what I had a problem that I had with one of these is that I accidentally bent this part whenever I was hammering it down, which is why I said if you're going to do a lot of these, I would recommend purchasing the pliers. But if that happens, you got to take this thing apart and put a new one in. Okay, so we'll go through and do the other two so that we're done with this one. All right, we've got this side done. And this just simply snaps into place. So that's it for the small piece. Now we'll start on the larger one. Okay, now what we want to do, if you can see, first thing we're going to do is make this end right here. So we're going to take a small piece and wrap it around the center of this buckle, the center part that moves around. We're going to wrap it around there, mark where we want it to be, and put one button there. Okay, so we've got this part done. I'm just going to snap this together. Now we're going to work on the rest. So we just connected this loop through the center of this buckle here. And now we're going to work on running it around. So if we've got our one that we're working on here, we're going to take our next buckle. We lay this one out so you can see it. And we're going to run it around. Like so. And then I'm going to flip this over so you can see the other side. and how this belt wraps around through here. So it'll come through, it'll come over through here, and then when it goes up, it's going to go through the buckle, over the center, and then down through. And this piece right here is the adjustable part that will allow you to tighten it up. Just like that. Now we know, because we've already made this one and we adjusted it to where we need it to be, we know where our button snaps need to be. Again, you will have to check yours and make the best decision on what you need for your mask based upon what fits. Okay, so all I'm going to do is I'm just going to line these up next to each other and mark where the holes need to be based upon this one. Okay, you guys, so there we have it. We've finished the strap for the back of the mask. As you can see, it's not too involved. Once you do it a little bit with the snaps and kind of get a hang of it, it's not too bad to put in. Again, I would recommend, if you're only going to do a couple of them, to just buy this little kit. I think it was $3 or $4. It's no big deal. You just use a hammer. But if you're going to do multiple ones, and then spend the $20 or $30, whatever it is, and buy you a pair of pliers. So now we're going to install this on our mask and see how it looks. Alright, you guys, so here is the strap installed on the back of the mask. This is how it fits. So basically you're going to put your head inside, and then you can move this buckle here left or right to loosen or to tighten it, however you need it to be. That's why I wanted to go with this. And as you can see, it was very easy to install. We already had the holes pre-made into the mask. And with these snap buttons installed, it's just very easy to wrap it around, snap it into place. If over time this becomes damaged or loose from being stretched out too many times, we can just make us another one and snap it back on just like this one. Alright, you guys, so a quick update here in regards to the eyes. Originally we were going to leave these clear so that we could see out of them very well, but what we got into was whenever we were filming the masks on us, you could see a very large portion of our face underneath, and it just kind of throws it off, and it doesn't really look very good, I think would be the best way to put it. So what we ended up doing, we looked online for some different options, and there's a lot out there. You really just need to do your research and do what's best for you, but what we thought would be the easiest way for our mask, and for the least amount of money as well, was to purchase some girls' tights. Now these are used like for ballet or whatever, you know, they would use them for, but they're not, they're a little bit thicker than like than they would be if you would buy them for women, and that's why these are actually better, the girls version. That way they don't just rip so easy, and you can stretch them. And what we ended up doing was wrapping them around the eye molds themselves getting it as tight as we can to get rid of any kind of creases or anything. And then we went around the back with the material and hot glue to adhere it just right around the edge, and then we trimmed off the excess. Then what we did was we flipped the mask over and we pushed them inside and inserted them in underneath the clips that we had put in. Now what that did was, since these are protruding through the mask, it allowed the material to have the same contour as the eye molds themselves, as the lenses. So it turned out really well. Now we can still see very well outside of the mask, but whenever you're looking at the mask, you can't see the person inside, which is exactly what we were wanting. So I just thought I'd give you guys a little bit of advice here if you're going to use something like this. This was $5 for a pair, and it worked pretty well. What you could also do, if you wanted to, is you could have another lens that goes over top of this to protect this from getting damaged, and maybe just go around the edge with a little bit of hot glue to hold it in place. There's a couple options, but I didn't see anyone online using these, and they are very inexpensive. You can get them from Target, Walmart, wherever, and I just thought it'd be a good idea to share this with you.
Well, there you have it, guys. You've seen what all we've went through in this process of making masks. All in all, it's been about a 10-month journey, which is much longer than we had ever imagined it would be. But persistence and hard work paid off. You've seen the beginning of the journey. We had reached out to a company in Turkey. That ended up taking us about 2 months just to work with them and get the masks, to find out that they weren't any good, weren't what we were wanting. So, we could have accepted defeat and then stopped, but we didn't. We moved forward. We realized that we wanted something that looked more like our logo, so we designed it in TinkerCAD. Once we had it 3D printed, we ran into the obstacle of the eyes. But then we thought about it, did research online, and figured out vacuum forming would be the best way for us to get the eyes that we wanted to get. So then we figured out how to do that. You've seen how we did that. Let's just go to show that persistence does pay off. And when you hit a road bump, don't get too discouraged. Take a moment, sit down, relax, take a day, take a week, however long it needs to be. Recuperate, and then try again. That's how we move forward and we get to the point that we want to be. If this video was at all entertaining or helpful to you, please like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you soon.